Here with Eric McCormack. I never ever thought this interview would be happening about a sci-fi show, you know? So can you tell me about like the draw to the script?
Well, I've had a weird kind of in and out of sci-fi over the years. An episode of Highlander and an episode of The Outer Limits, but to actually commit to a whole show, it took a great script, a contemporary script. I was not going to be that guy that ran around a spaceship. I don't think that was ever in the cards for me. This show is not that. This show, I was saying before that you could turn the sound down and think you were watching, a modern sort of undercover cop drama a lot of the time, because that's really what these characters are and what the draw was for me. That this concept that they're living a double life. They have a mission. They are from the future, and that those missions will get carried out slowly but surely over the course of the series. But in the meantime, they have to live these other lives, and they are constantly actors. They are constantly playing a role that they only really kind of had some minimal prep on, and they start to realize that one of them's a mother, one of them's in my case a husband, and you can only do so much prep and before you really are going to have to keep spinning those plates forever. We're not going home, and I love that part of the script.
So let's take it right to the beginning. Like for somebody who doesn't know what the show is about, what is it about?
Well, I mean, I know Brad explained a lot of the science fiction part of it, but really, it's the idea that in order to fix the future, you've got to fix the past. But that doesn't mean let's go back and assassinate Hitler. It's much more sophisticated than that. We can only go back to a point where technology allows us to know the specific time and place that someone's going to pass away. We take over their body in such a way that hopefully nobody knows. And so there's always that for each of the characters, that brief period where someone's going, "You okay, Mike?" And it's like, "Well, yes, I'm fine. I'm Mike. Thanks for asking. I'm good." But these are characters, as we'll discover, that they haven't seen the sun. They haven't eaten good food. The future is very bleak. That's why they've come back to fix it. We don't get to see it. We only get little glimpses of it in what people say. But it's really amazing to watch these different characters who are not how they appear. I mean, four of the characters of the five, me being the fifth, are young, and yet they're not necessarily young in the future. They've been put into younger bodies that they get to live through, and they get to experience the clean air, and they drive a car for the first time. So for me, a big part of the show, and I think for a lot of the audience, it will be watching everything in 2016 through these very new eyes.
You're definitely one of the more experienced actors on the team. Like, does that sort of like did that translate on set too? Like, did people come up to you to ask for advice, or was it something that sort of like everybody's on the same team? The experience wasn't really a factor.
They're all pretty confident. Them young folk. The four that we got to play My Other Travelers are young and beautiful. All of them. They're also quite experienced. They've all been doing it since they were in their teens, and so while I think they had a nice sort of Uncle Eric trust in me, they didn't really need a whole
Right.
lot of advice. They brought a weight to it that surprised the hell out of me. All four of them, really. You're going to be surprised. I should say five, because Patrick Gilmore is also in it, and he's a little older, and he's so good in his non-traveler role. So I think that's one of the big things that audiences are going to take away is they're going to fall in love with some actors that perhaps they don't know.
Grant McLaren is such a layered character. Like I've only seen the pilot, but I feel like we've barely even scratched the surface of this guy. Is that going to play out over the course of the first season?
Yeah, it was the odd part of the of getting on board for me is that the pilot was directed by Nick Horan, who wasn't going to come back. He was only going to direct the pilot, and yet I got to work with him very little because, as audiences will see, I'm not in it that much to begin with, which is a bit of a tease. Um, and so yeah, he goes very interesting places, particularly as I say, when he realizes, oh, okay, now I have to go and meet this woman that I've been married to for 11 years that I have never met, and I have to live this life and treat this partner like a best friend. Those are the elements that we start to see. We also start to see that he who he is. He's the leader for a reason. He's got a very strong idea of what's right and wrong and what the mission is, and some of the other travelers in time start to doubt. So the orders that they've been given, and also they start to fall for this life. That's the crazy thing. They're not. I made a reference before about this kind of being like being in the trenches, but the truth is, the future's the trenches. This is a pretty nice life. It's very tempting to go, look, let's just take what we got here and be happy. But they have to constantly be reminded by McLaren, there's a mission here. The rules are there for a reason. We are soldiers. We don't question them.
My favorite part of the show is when that countdown thing comes up. I feel like it's all 24 all over again. You know, like, oh my God, this guy's going down. Like, he's going to die. Is that part of the excitement for it?
I think so. I mean, that was I remember when we first were starting, Brad was trying to figure out visually how he wanted, he and Nick were talking about it. How do we make this exciting, new, but something that is also filled with a little dread? I mean, once you realize what it is, and you do in the first 5 minutes, as that third and fourth traveler start to transition, you go, oh crap, I know what that means. That's not good for this person. So, and that will continue through the series, and it'll come at the weirdest time, and we'll continue to use it to surprise people about how people die, when people die, and is that the person you think is about to die? Who's that clock for? So it's an element that I think will continue to be something that is that creates that excitement.
There are so many big concepts here: death, time travel. Is it hard to sort of like narrow those down, because these are pretty big things that you're focusing on in every episode?
Yeah, and I think what we discover in the second episode and on is that we're not the only 5 people sent from the future. There are traveler teams everywhere. And just as we've read about in the Second World War, there were often top secret missions where any group of soldiers only knew their bit. They didn't even understand how that bit was going to help. But all those bits together created something bigger. And so that's our thing, is that what the audience will see as they start to get to know us and the lives of the host bodies, these characters that we've taken over, is that we don't have a big sense of the big picture any more than the audience does. They're going to have to stick around and watch us learn if we're all going to figure out what the point of all this is.
Why are audiences so into these sci-fi shows? You know, do we just have this like alien fetish, this time travel fetish? Like, they're all so popular. You look at like the top shows on TV right now, they have some kind of sci-fi component. What is it about sci-fi right now that's so hot?
Well, my wife is a big sci-fi person, so I sometimes ask her that very question. And I think it's just that it is limitless, that within, we call it a genre, but it is a genre that is constantly pushing, and there's only so many things you can do with a romantic comedy or with this or that. There's conventions that can't be screwed with too much, but the conventions of sci-fi, of time travel, of alien life, of what's really going on in our world, it can be pushed in about 150 different ways.
All right. Are you ready for the final question?
Okay.
Are you ready?
I don't know.
Okay.
Is it not boxers and briefs?
Don't do that. No. We'll skip that one. So I asked Brad the same question. You got a TMI. Okay, but can you sell me on the show? Like, audiences tune in. What can they expect from every episode? And you got to beat Brad's. That's the hard part.
Wow, I got to beat Brad's.
Yeah, but you got the advantage of hearing his. So
right. I think this is a show. First of all, I would say if you like Orphan Black, this is a show for you. If you're not a sci-fi person, you're going to be stunned at how much you love this show. If you are a sci-fi person, this is going to push buttons that other shows aren't pushing. I think that these 5 characters will grab you and take you on a journey that you will be desperate to see the next episode.
Amazing, Eric. Thank you so much.
Thank you.